Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How is everyone doing? Hope you guys are well, in the best of health, in the best of states, as we continue on in our pursuit for meaning. Apologies if you guys have been waiting for new releases. It's been a while. A lot of things has been going on. I had some in store actually, but I kept it on a pause because of the recent events. And I feel I have something to share, which I feel is very important moving forward. And I felt it as soon as I was watching the news. And I think it's very important for us to highlight this event, highlight this issue, and I hope it will be of benefit to everyone around us. Sure. So I titled this video "Getting Over My Terrorism." Why am I bringing this up? It's because, as we can see right now in this world, right now, there's a massive war going on. Not really war, a massive genocide and destruction for people, indigenous people who have been living in that land for thousands of years, and who, because of colonialism, because the British decision to give something which does not belong to them, and hence today what we have is we see a mass, almost like a genocide happening. It's actually, some people even consider it genocide. Ethnic cleansing. Some people also consider this already an ethnic cleansing, where a group of people from a European descent, of course, racially, um, racially, they are Jews, but but those who moved, who moved since the creation of Israel, well, most of them were European descent, and those people, and there were also, of course, um, Jews who lived in the Muslim lands. They also moved to Israel also as well, not because there was tensions before, but the creation of Israel by the British created a tension between the communities there. What I'm trying to say, example, is that before the creation of Israel, the Jews which were living in Morocco, which were living in Iraq, which were living in all the different countries, different places, they were living basically well. There was no issues, but on the when Israel was created, that's where the whole friction came about. I mean, understandably, and also, and because of the frictions, those Jews who lived in those lands moved out and to go to Israel. Not all of them did, of course. There's still quite a number of them in the Arab countries, and also there were also Jews living in Gaza and all those different places, but they also moved to Jerusalem because, of course, security reasons. Why would you want to live on a place where your kids can get killed? There's bombs coming up. There's always settlers coming around and probably attacking the people. Why would you want to take the risk of being in a place where danger is inevitable? Of course, you want to move to a place which is safer. So this issue that we are having today is because of that. The British, one of their failures, of the many failures that they had did because of the British Empire. They promised a place which does not belong to them, and hence today we see a massive friction between two people. The people who came from Europe after the Europeans. I just want to make it is very important to discuss this. I didn't even want to highlight it, but I think it's important to highlight it. The idea of anti-Semitism, the idea of anti-Jew, the idea of hating, these were all European concepts. These ideas was never in the Muslim experience, was never in the Muslim life. The Jews live the best life with the Muslims. This is a fact. This is a well-known fact. Prior to the creation of Israel, the Jews lived the best with the Muslims. The Muslims protected them against the Christians, because the Christians looked at the Jews, pre-Zionist Christians looked at the Jews as God killers. So they hated the Jews. If even you look at Shakespeare wrote his famous book, a famous poem, regarding the Jew who wants to take a pound of flesh, because they practice usury. They practice, for the Jews who lived in Europe, they practice usury, banking, which meant, but they don't practice banking in between themselves, because for them that is wrong, or in a Muslim perspective it's haram. But they are allowed to practice usury on Gentiles, which is non-Jews. So this is why the non-Jews in Europe dislike them a lot, and the Muslims in the land, they don't practice usury. So you can see, so this problem of anti-Semitism, this problem of Jew hating, this problem of was never there prior to the creation of Israel. In fact, there is this personality which is very important for the Jews. His name is Maimonides. He was known to be the second Moses. Can you imagine who is Moses for the Jews? Moses, alayhi salatu wasalam, he was one of the most important figures for the Jews. He was the one who he received revelation from God, and they follow the commandments based on the Torah, and they follow these laws. And this person who they venerate to be the second Moses. Can you imagine what kind of rank did that? They get Musa was a prophet, and now they call this person the second Moses, who his name was Maimonides. And guess where did Maimonides come from? He was in Andalus. He was in Islamic Spain. He was writing in Arabic, and the Jews and the Jewish people had the best experience they had in civilization in Muslim lands. They did not enjoy themselves in Europe. They suffered a lot tremendously in Europe. The Europeans cursed them, ridiculed them for many various reasons. And unfortunately, this guilt, this Western guilt, this unfortunate event that was created in Europe is now then transferred over to the people of Palestine, who welcomed them at first, and then went on to became to where it is today. It's a long topic, of course. There's so many things you can discuss about it, but I just want to make it clear what is the perspective, or what is one of the many perspectives that they have. And then next part is when I make this title of this topic called Getting Over My Terrorism. I just want to make it clear that I never supported any form of terrorism. I reject all form of terrorism. Terrorism is not in any way an Islamic expression of any way. It is impossible for a Muslim to be a terrorist. There is no justification, no assertion from the Deen of Islam to allow any forms of terrorism. If we define it according to what political scientists as attacking or killing civilians in order to get a political stance, or causing hurt or harm to civilians to get a political or social means, or to force governments to follow certain groups of people understanding of faith. So, and also even in Islamic perspective, in the event of war, it is well known in books like in the books of fiqh, where it is not allowed for you, even in the war, to kill, to cut trees, bro. You're not even to cut trees now. You're not allowed to cut trees. There is injunction of not cutting down trees. Can you just imagine? If you are not allowed culture, you can allowed to kill like babies, um, women, civilians. It's an impossibility. It's an impossibility. You are not allowed to intentionally attack these people, intentionally burn down any trees. You're not allowed to do any of those. And if people do, and if any people who claim to be from an Islamic perspective and intentionally attack those people, then they have clearly violated an Islamic teaching, and there's no justification within the Islam. They have done something wrong within the deen, and we must reject those actions, and we must criticize those actions, and we must be fair and must be just in condemning such things. I mean, this condemnation of doing wrong action is there in our deen. We Muslims do not need anyone else to tell us that. We condemn. We are the first people to correct wrong actions of our people. Just to put it there. We know that pretty well. So, but so just to make that clear, there's never in that. But what I'm gonna address is something deeper. What am I trying to address? You will see as we move on, as we move forward. The next thing is I want to talk about is this idea of terrorism. Recently, in the UN, I think like a few weeks ago, before this whole interestingly, before October 7th, around I think October 3rd, 2nd or 3rd, they had a forum. And this forum, they were discussing the definition of terrorism. And so all the different countries came around, and then they discussed on this is why I define this one. So there was a central definition. They wanted to streamline the definition or standard definition according to political scientists. But this definition was rejected because different countries had different definition of terrorism. You just imagine that. Different countries had different definitions of terrorism, and so because they all had different definitions of what terrorism is, the results was inconclusive. Because if they were to adopt the perspective of political scientists of what terrorism is, then probably 60 to 70% of governments in the world will probably be terrorists. So this idea of having a definition of what terrorism is, countries define what terrorism is to fit a certain perspective, to fit their certain agenda of what terrorism is. So when the United States of America calls somebody terrorism, unfortunately, I don't think they have a moral stand ground to declare anyone as a terrorist. I think the United States of America has, unfortunately, all the checklist ticks to define themselves as a terrorist. Let me give you an example. How many wars have they done prior to the World War II? It is known by themselves that they are the ones who gave Saddam Hussein chemical weapons to bomb Iran. And after Iraq decided to try to be funny and went to war with Kuwait, they then attacked Kuwait. Don't we know that the United States of America were the ones who funded the Taliban against the Soviet Union? And after that, when it did not fit them, they bombed and killed as many people as they wanted. We can go on and on and on and on, but if you want to find the answers, you can just go online and Google and find out. But just to give you some perspective, the amount of casualties, the amount of people who have died because of the wars that America has taken, just America, the numbers is about 4.5 million during war and post-war. People who died because of malnutrition. If you put malnutrition into the whole equation, it'll be about 7 million people. The United States of America has killed about 7 million people because of their wars. How can this being, or this beast called the United States of America, define what is terrorism. They have no moral stand ground, moral justification to give any sort of definition on what is the definition of terrorism. Because in any definition that they choose, I'm sure there will be somebody out there who will be able to use that same definition against them and say, bro, you are the terrorist. So I think it's very important for us to understand this, that we need to put things into perspective, look at the world objectively, and if you want to use words and language, if you want to have a standard, if you want to claim there is such thing as international law, if you want to claim that there is such thing as justice, then there must be a standard. There must be a rule by which we follow. You can't say there's one rule for one kind of people and another rule for other kind of people. This is because people believe in different things, or they do not fit your certain perspective. And unfortunately, what can we ask? I mean, why do I expect different? Unfortunately, but the reality is that. And in an Islamic perspective, Allah says in the Quran that be just, even if it's against yourself. Even if it's against yourself. This is an important. And just to make it just to put another thing out there. If people still think that Muslims are anti-Jews, we are not. Very interestingly, the Jews who lived in the Ottoman Empire under the Muslims, the Ottoman Empire did something very amazing. When we talk about pluralistic environments, giving people the opportunities to express themselves, there is, even in Western countries, there is some form of that. Give them that, but not at the level of which the Muslims gave other people. What do I mean? In the Ottoman Empire, the Jews could rule and to judge their own lives according to their laws. The Christians could rule their lives according to their laws. They had different court systems, fully independent, not state governed. There was no state imposition on what they can do or cannot do. Example on what is right and wrong. For example, they cannot impose onto the majority, their values of maybe drinking alcohol. I mean, there are some basic imposition according to Islamic law, but other than that, it was fair play. And even though that was the case, majority of Jews, Jews, went to the Muslim court, the Ottoman court, to get to fulfill their to fight for their cases. Why? Because they felt that the Muslims will be more just for them. I do, very interestingly. So we talk about giving people equal fairness and contribution. I think people need to read up more. I mean, I'm not saying all this to talk about all the great past. No, I'm just giving you an idea that you might not know. The historical fact that this was the reality in many Muslim states, Muslim countries, not even country state, the Muslim experience when they were the governing force. Today, when we talk about Muslim countries, we are enframed in a nationalistic perspective. We have not experienced the world beyond nationalism, where we declare our nation state before anything else. The idea of borders, passports, and all that kind of stuff is a modern phenomenon. It was not something that we had in our entire human experience. It's a new thing, and human beings did not experience this. So when we talk about the idea of Muslim countries today, they do not represent, I would say, the full or complete, or not even a fraction of the reality of what an Islamic experience of governance is. Just so we make it clear. But what I want to go back to, I always digress, but I just wanna put that out there. So back to the topic. It was a pretty far digression, but back to the topic of which I wanna discuss. I'm a 90s kid, you know. I grew up in the 90s. And basically I was a children of people who grew up in the environment of the Gulf War. My parents and the people before in my previous generation, they grew up in seeing on the TV news of the Iran war, the Iraq war, how the Arabs were fighting against each other, and how America came to save the day, and also watch shows like um, Top Gun. You know, ask your parents uh, whether they know about the show Top Gun, you know, and how in that show Top Gun, I mean, before Top Gun, Americans were good friends with Iraqs, you know, the Iraqis. We Saddam Hussein, we were good friends. They were like best friends, um, and Americans actually supported Iraq in their war against Iran. They give them, like I mentioned before, they give them all the weapons, and they bomb the living crap out of Iran. As soon as it fits American purpose, you know, you're good. You're in my good books. You know, I give you the weapons of mass destruction. Chemical weapons is fine. Just like the weapons that they're giving to Israel today is fine. You're good friends with me. I'll give you whatever you need. And so, and I'm not. This is not conspiracy theory, by the way. Just Google it. You know, and there's this good friend called Google. Just Google it and find out. The America give Iraq chemical weapons to bomb Iran. You know, in declassified CIA documents, you'll find it. You'll find this, you know, and the previous generation, above us, watched on the TV, you know, the best propaganda machine there has ever been, the television. They watch on the TV how this nationalistic Arabs who have Muslim names, who use Arabic words, who spoke in Arabic, who used the word Wallah and all this kind of stuff. These people were engaged in war and they were fighting each other and bombing here, bombing there, and America's like, you know, stop, don't do this, you know. And then they watch movies like Top Gun where they made Saddam Hussein into a dog, you know, and all of these different kind of things. And they and because they keep on seeing these images of a dog-like Saddam Hussein, and they look like passionate animals. And when you look like a dog, and then you laugh about it, and then when you watch these people actually engage in war in real life, and then you kind of formulate in your minds, maybe this is possible. You know, maybe this is possible. Maybe there's some truth to it. Maybe there is some reality to the fact, some reality that these Arabs and these Muslims are really barbarians and animals. So there must be some truth to it. There must be some truth to the fact that these Arabs were really barbarians, and these Muslims must really have some sort of problems. And when you watch these on the news and you watch this over and over again, and then the Arabs were just experiencing this new thing called nationalism, you know, just discovering what this word nationalism mean after the post-World War, and they are somewhat just coming out of the experience of colonialism, you know. Some say we are not still out of colonialism, but you know, oh well. So after watching all of this, this idea definitely crept into them. You know, because watching the TV is a monologue. You know, just watching a one-sided perspective. You watch this, but there's this machine. You know, it's looking at you and it's just giving you all this information. There's no response. You know, you just consuming like an angry Karen. You want to, there's no way of interjection, there's no way of discussion. You just consume and consume and consume. And what this consumption of these images by the propaganda machine of that time create a fracture in the minds of a previous generation. It create a fracture and in their minds about what it meant to be Muslims, or what it means to be associated to Islam. And if you just give you an example, if you have grandparents, ask your grandparents, what is success? And then ask your parents, what is success? And then, we can also ask ourselves, what is success? And then you'll most likely find that there is a striking difference between those in these three generations. Success in those terms, success in the previous generation, in our generation, in our grandparents' generation, all the definitions are different. Why is it different? You can ask yourself. And if you haven't had those discussions, if you haven't had those discussions with your grandparents, I think it's high time that you did, because it is very important that you did. And then these people who watched on the news, watch these barbarians, dog-like Arabs, Muslims, excuse me, screaming Allahu Akbar, getting bombed by America and getting destroyed and defeated by the mighty United States, give birth to us, and give birth to this next generation of people. And I don't know, like in our age, there was this boom of technology. We had technology was going so fast. There was the DVD, there was a laser disc, and then there was the I forgot those words. Like this where you had one side and two side, and then there was Blu-ray, and then it just went on, and then now you don't even need that. So technology was moving so fast. And then, in the schools, we had computer labs, there was the internet, and then out of nowhere, boom, September 11th, 2001. And things were never the same again. I remember, actually, after September 11th, there was my school organized assembly, and we were sitting in the courtyard, and I couldn't really remember what they were saying, but I clearly remember they were talking about some Muslim terrorists and all that kind of stuff. I can't remember how it felt. I can't remember how it felt, but I cannot forget that memory. I forgot what they said, I forgot what they did, but I definitely remembered what happened. And then when this thing happened, September 11 happened, it seemed like the character in the movies of those my previous generation, Muslims and non-Muslims, they all consume the same shows. They all watch the same things. They all watch on the news. And somewhat now in my children's generation, I thought it was finished. We defeated them. Suddenly out of nowhere, September 11 comes. These Arabs, Muslim, Allahu Akbar, they come in and they bomb the Twin Towers. And then look, even in my generation, these animals, remember, they showed Saddam Hussein like a dog. These animals who shout Allahu Akbar and all that kind of stuff, they are still alive. And now they have the audacity to come in and bomb the bastion of the greatest country that has ever existed, the United States of America. And these animal-like human beings are still present today. And then I imagine how it felt for my Muslims of my previous generation above us. It must have been shocking, because right now in the idea of a media and be able to convey information is much faster. And then the idea of the rhetoric, and then these people, the rhetoric of Muslims now in the global sphere again, creating havoc and creating the greatest attack on American history. Um, reignited, reignited the possibility that it is true that these barbarians that we have watched many years ago are really barbarians today. And so after September 11, um, the greatest country to ever live existed, the United States of America, started their onslaught on the Arabs and Muslims all over the world. In the Muslims world again. War after war. They started to force upon their client states this idea of terrorism, and that you also search in your midst the terrorist that is within your states. And so you see until today, countries deploy fear tactics. They reignite the idea of terrorists being within your midst. Something like the COVID, no? Something like COVID. There's a lurking danger that you can't see around you. They're just coming to strike. And the idea of terrorism and fear puts people in their place. And so I remember growing up, and the rhetoric, of course, people, I saw my previous generations felt afraid. They are afraid to associate themselves, to be too Muslim. They did not want to sound or look like a Muslim. And then the some of the scholars, or not scholars, people who had some information about religion, who held some position in office, according to them, they were scholars, started to have the rhetoric that those people are not Muslims, like they are not like us, they are not like us, they a very defensive position, put it like that. The Muslim became very defensive, like no, 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 we are not like that, no, 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 no. And then the non-Muslims were like, hey, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it must be a duck. I don't blame them. So unfortunately, I grew up in this experience. I noticed that people around me, after September 11, experiencing all that experience, I asked myself, like, am I a terrorist? I asked myself, am I a terrorist? And so because of that, I think September 11 create a great dissonance within myself. Create a great doubt within myself. Like, am I a terrorist? Is my belief system terroristic? And as I grew up and was growing up after September 11, I was brought to like some mosques, some museums, and then in those museums, because I went to a Catholic school, and I was grew up with a lot of non-Muslims around me, and so it was like a school excursion. It was a school excursion. Let's excursion to see these terrorists, what they are all about. And so, being a Muslim, I together with my non-Muslim friends, we went to mosques, we went to like museums, and there we watched on those congratulated boards, pictures of people who look like a duck, who quack like a duck. It must be a duck. But instead of duck, there was Arabic words. There was Allahu Akbar. There was the beard. There was the turban. There was the jalaba, and I can't really express to you how I felt when I went there. But when I passed by and I looked past those congregated boards, um, I asked myself, I questioned myself, like, do I want to be associated with those people? Because it seems to me that to be a true Muslim is that you gotta look like that, you gotta sound like that, you gotta be like that. Not be in a sense of doing those terrorist acts, but the exterior perception was that, uses Islamic terms, probably you have a lot of things in common, you know. And I grew up definitely, I grew up, and then I could just wonder, if that was the idea I had in my mind growing up. I can just imagine the ideas and the imprints and the perception of those people who are non-Muslims, my non-Muslim friends, about Islam. Imagine that you grew up now, what, it's 2011, you're 11 years old, you saw this group of people, you saw in the news, and it didn't stop since then. The idea that Muslims are terrorists, and then as you were growing up, you look at basically congregated boards, printed boards everywhere, terrorists, Muslims. What happens to their perception? What happens to the way they think? And then, of course, I question my identity, question my faith, question my whether I want to be a Muslim or not, or whether my faith is Islam or not, where my faith should be Islam or not, and I guess that was the point where I experienced or thought about many different train of thoughts, ideas, and perceptions of what is truth. And then I grew up also thinking, I didn't want to be associated with those people who wore turbans, long beards, shouting Allahu Akbar. I grew up in this idea that any semblance or resemblance to this idea, to this image, is wrong, because I don't want to be like a duck, I don't want to sound like the duck, I don't want to be this duck. Why would I want to put myself in this environment of associating myself with terrorists, so I definitely, for me, no way that I'm gonna be like that. And I guess this is the reason why there are such a massive influx of liberal Muslims in the community today, people of my generations, where they don't want to be they like this idea of liberalizing the Islam. They do not want to have some sort of association with the Islamic identity. Not to say that you must wear a turban, long beard and stuff to be a Muslim. No, because those some scholars even say that is not the Sunnah. The Sunnah is modesty and all those other injunctions. It is the Islamic philosophy. But the idea of holding on to Islamic principles, not liberal values, Islamic principles itself becomes problematic. You don't want to be Islam first. You want to be liberal first and then Islam. You get what I mean? So I can understand where that's coming from. So and then because of that experience of terrorism, because of the experience growing up, I understand where they're going. And then also when you grow up, fortunately I see many people of my previous generation, post 9/11. I see Muslim men who had beards, shave off their beards before going to the airport. I see Muslim women who wore the hijab all their life because they were going to travel. They opened the hijab because they didn't want to be stereotyped as a terrorist. And I grew up listening to scholars who told us that you need to behave yourself. You need to behave yourself, as though being Muslim had an inherent contradiction with reality, or being a Muslim itself, you needed to behave because you don't have, you inherent in your belief structure is a problem, that you are not fit for this society, so you need to behave yourself. I listened to this person when he passed away already. Allah forgive him and guide him, and forgive him and elevate his state and forgive his sins. But um, I can never forget those man's words, and I don't want to mention his name, but yeah, that is the reality. I hear people talking like that, and then because of those people, because of the state, because of the media, mass media, and all that kind of stuff, and the impression that the society gives you. One of the feelings that I noticed from the previous generation to our generation is that don't be too religious. You'll be extreme. You end up being extreme. It was a huge challenge for me changing, because there was or rethinking my perspective, because that was the understanding on the ground. And so for the majority of my teens and growing up, this was my reality. I watched America, the bastion of the free world, the greatest country to ever live, the moral standard of justice and truth, bomb the shit of Muslims and Arab countries all around the world. And I see their client states policing their Muslim community, and putting them in their place, reminding them about their terrorism, reminding them that you all sound like a duck, you look like a duck, you must be a duck, so behave yourself and don't be a duck. That was basically the idea on the ground. And then I even remember in school, there was one time in school, because I was in a Catholic school, I don't attend catechism, but I had to attend social studies. And one of my teachers, may Allah forgive him, I don't know why I happened to him now, it's a Chinese man, and I was kind of a rascal growing up. Maybe I still am. I forgot what happened, but he ended up saying that your God is a terrorist and you are a terrorist. Of course, I grabbed him by his neck or his collar, and the students separated us, and I was chased out of the class. Can you just imagine a teacher calling my God, calling Allah a terrorist, calling me a terrorist? What was in his mind? No, what beneath, Allah says, one ayah in the Quran, Allah says, they say, tufsidu ruhu akbar, that they say some words to you, but underneath the one that is the word hidden behind those words, internally, what they hide in their breasts or their hearts is worse. And this man, this teacher, could say to me that I was a terrorist, say to my God is a terrorist. Imagine what he was hiding in his heart. But how did he get there is my another question. Why was this idea propagated? Why was the experience, was it good to promote such an idea? Well, that's a question for another day, but yeah, I got chased out of class, and I went to the discipline master's office, and I said he called me a terrorist. He called my God a terrorist. But I somehow knew that there will be no justice. Because why? I sound like a duck. I look like a duck. And I profess to be a duck. So, how can you expect? Anyone to defend you? When isn't that the truth? So, and also of course, I was a pretty challenging kid growing up. I would admit that. Um, I would beat myself up if I had to deal with me at that age. I would probably beat myself up. But I probably, a lot of it, you can somehow connect it to this internal crisis, of being who I am. And I was growing up in Catholic school, and yeah. Anyway, but with all this happening, I always enjoyed watching Ahmadiyya. You know, Ahmadiyya became one of the important things that I watched. Maybe because it gave me some sort of strength in becoming Muslim, of a reason of why I'm still Muslim. Alhamdulillah, one day I came across a book, a small, very small pamphlet, a small booklet actually. The book that he wrote called Muhammad the Greatest. And I think the reason of why I'm still Muslim today is because of that book. It's because I read that book, and I saw clearly. It gave me a clear understanding of why I'm Muslim. You know, even if the entire world um, rejected it. And then a few years later, that gave me that book gave me some sort of reality of why I'm Muslim, but I never really looked at why, or the idea of what a Muslim is. I was quite young. And then many years later, um, I came across a video, was introduced by a friend, this scholar, and then that watching those videos of this person changed my perspective of what it meant to be a Muslim in this 21st century. Another video which was very popular back then was called Zeitgeist, the rethinking of your age. And because of social media, or video of accessibility to information like YouTube and all this kind of stuff, it gave me a possibility of thinking with beyond the confines of my society. It broke and forced me to rethink the truths that I had. And it forced me to ask this question of why do I believe the way I believe? Why am I doing what am I doing? And it forced me to rethink the truths I had about this manufactured worldview that I have, this manufactured perspective that I have. And what that led was an avalanche of questions, an avalanche of doubts on this perception of had in this world. And it broke. It destroyed every single thing. I rethink everything. I reevaluated all the values I had. In the words of Friedrich Nietzsche, he said the transvaluation of all values. I doubted. And the seeking of answers and seeking of questions led me to a roller coaster of events. A journey of this journey of self-discovery was exciting. It gave I felt liberated from the prisons of my societal experience. I felt free from those things which was imprinted or manufactured by society on me. I felt free from those congregated boards that I grew up watching. I felt free from the consistent enforcement of the idea that I was a terrorist. I felt free from it. And because then I realized, I understood where I was and what I was doing in this world, I had to leave. I had to leave things behind. I had to move on. I had to move forward. And so, because of that, I lost friends. I moved. I didn't lose friends, but I moved. I couldn't bring everybody along with me. It was an impossible thing. But as I moved along, when I was around my 18s and 20s, and during this experience of discovery, of course, you live the group of people they used to hang out with. Everyone had their own different ideas, different perspectives. Of course. Things change, and then as I change, And that's when I started to grow a little bit of a beard. I wore the turban. I wear jalaba once in a while. I wear a long rosary around my neck. I started to post, Islamic perspective ideas into on my Facebook posts, all that kind of stuff. Getting excited of this new discovery I had. Of course, I would say I had some ridiculous thinking back then, but never once did I wanted or desired to do something bad to people, to do something which was kill people, or all that kind of stuff. It's an impossible thing. Never they crossed my mind that was a possibility. But yeah, so I wore all those cups, and of course, and then one of my friends, I would say a good friend of mine growing up, um he posted on my wall. He posted on my wall. Um, this post my he posted on my wall. Something I want to share with you guys. Show you. This is what he posted on my wall. Basically a picture of me. A superimposed picture of me. In Osama bin Laden. Yeah, and this picture properly describes what it meant to be a true Muslim. It felt like to be true to your faith meant that people around you who did not understand your faith, or did not question your faith, who did not find out what your faith meant, who probably didn't care about the meaning of what faith means, this is probably what they will look to you. And why they will look at you like that was why do they look at you the way they looked at you? Is it inherently because I am that? I'm Osama bin Laden, or because who told them there's the truth? I mean, it's something for those people to answer themselves. Who told you, and why do you think that there's an association? If you say no, I was just joking, I don't mean it like that. No, 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 don't say that. That's cowardice. That is saying something and then not having the courage to defend your perception. There is an association. I don't deny it. You sound like a duck. You quack like a duck. You look like a duck. And then this is what they say. So I, of course, I replied. I say, haha, I know what you meant. And then he replied, say, in the making. So, I say soon, soon. But I will be in a coat and a tie instead. Meaning that how you will define what a terrorism is, the terrorist is not how I see it. I think that a person who does good in this world, who changes all definition of what it means to be a good person, can also be seen as a terrorist. Look at Nelson Mandela. Look at people who struggled. Gandhi. They were all seen as terrorists. Martin Luther King. They were also seen as terrorists. People looked at the state forced this idea of terrorism on them. So I say, yeah, soon, just playing along. And they say, bomb in the back, yo. I say, I don't need bombs, bro. The revolution is too easy now. Meaning, we don't need bombs. The revolution is in thinking. Thinking is easy. Thinking, you don't have to, and you're not allowed to kill anybody. You just need to use your brains. Quote, and then one of my friends say, haha, quote and tie, barak. And then he said, okay, no offense. And then after he said, please, make your profile photo, please. And I told him, because he said no offense, of course, the idea of no offense, it's fine lah. I'm used to it, of course. And because that's what my experience has been. I mentioned earlier, like I was liberated from this idea of terrorists. And so I'm used to it. I'm used to people looking at me and say, shit, this guy, is he up to no good? Shit, this guy, he's proclaiming his Islamic faith. Is he a terrorist? And I'm used to it. And then, yeah, and as you can see, the rest of my friends, my secondary school friends, comments. So, yeah. So, the reason why I want to share this with you is not to show you any victimization or show you that I'm a victim of anything like that, but to just give you a fact of the story, that the reality of a lot of Muslims adult life was this: that if you are a Muslim, you are a terrorist, but you are a hidden terrorist, and so you must be guilty that you are a terrorist. And because you are part of this terroristic community, you must already know your place in society. That you can't demand things, that you can't ask for things, that your values, your rights must be kept somewhere, and you must just shut up. Because why? You are a terrorist. Haven't you seen 9/11? Haven't you seen Top Gun? Haven't you seen how the free world, this civilized world called, which is led by the moral and amazing civilization called the United States of America and their client states, are showing you that they are proof that you guys are terrorists. So behave yourself. As one of the scholars that I grew up, I heard him 2-3 times. I went to a place where he was teaching 2-3 times, and I got disgusted. And I went there to eat biryani. That's all. That's the only thing they were good for. I never went there anything against for any other reason. But yeah, that's why you heard these people. They admitted. They admit that they I do not know why they admit, because they're not, but they accepted the rhetoric that they are part terrorists. And so because they are part terrorists, they must behave themselves. Because they are part terrorists cannot work with non-Muslims. They are subhuman. Part terrorists cannot function in this real world. However, this is the reality of me, growing my adult life, growing up and experience in this world. This is the reality that people today, scholars and voices of the community, or people who represent the community, are still terrorists. What do I mean by terrorists? They accept the notion that being a Muslim is terrorist. They accept the notion that the idea that they sound like a duck, they look like a duck, and they quack like a duck. They believe in their terrorism, and hence why they act the way they do. Alhamdulillah wa shukrulillah that we have prophetic role models. The people who do not conform, who do not fall trap to this kind of rhetorics. They don't fall traps to being relevant. They are the cognitive dissonance of this world, and they are the true representative of the prophets, of the prophet, because they did not care. There are those people who do not care, who do not fall into the rhetoric trap, who do not become sellouts, and their presence and their words that they use deny all these philosophical philosophies. They have the eye and the perception and the understanding to take people out of this rhetoric of thinking the way they think. And now, coming after telling you guys the story, comes to the point of this entire video. Recently, Netanyahu said that Israel has faced their own 9/11, and Biden said that Israel has experienced 50 9/11s. And everyone who supports, and Ben Shapiro, the Zionist and genocide sympathizer, said that anyone who supports Palestine is a terrorist sympathizer. And you see this, boom, on the social sphere. And so, no, no, no. No, 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 no. I don't want to be a terrorist sympathizer. I don't want to be a terrorist. Again. And then history revives itself again. Along on the entire news, you see these words. Do you condemn blah 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 blah? Do you condemn blah blah blah? Why? We must ask this people this question. Ask this question. Why are you asking? Why are you asking me this? Am I a terrorist? Why are you asking me whether I condemn the killing of babies, children? Even we admit that it were civilians killed, but when they say like 40 decapitated babies, stuff. Why do you ask us this question? And then of course there are sellouts, who accept this rhetoric, and then acknowledge their part terrorism, and they say things and succumb to the argument, and they say, yeah, I condemn all these people and all this kind of stuff, and then they accept because why they don't want to be terrorists. They want to say that I'm not a terrorist. Those people are, not me. I'm good. I'm not part animal. I may look like an animal a bit, but I'm not really an animal. I'm not really an animal. I'm human like you. So I condemn all these people. But how about you? Shall we play the condemn card on them as well? Shall we ask them the question, do you condemn the existence of the United States of America? The fact that United States of America has wiped out, ethnically cleansed the Indians people, the indigenous people of America. How about that? Do you condemn that the British, the existence of the British is the reality, and blah 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 blah? Shall we go on this card? But we don't have to do that. I want to tell you is that we don't have to do that. We don't have to steep down to this materialist and godless rhetoric. The Muslims today, Muslims will forever become the embodiment of goodness in this world. Even if the entire world says no. Even if the entire world says no. And what we should do is that we cannot and we will not succumb to the perception and the enforcement and this propagation of this idea that of the propaganda machine to dictate to people or to dictate to us the perception of us. Enough is enough. When they say never again, never again, never again, how about we tell you this? Never again. Never again will you push this rhetoric of terrorism or idea that Muslims are terrorists ever again. How about we tell you never again? And the only possibility of this happening is that you must resist it. When I say resist it, it's not going out there flagging flags, putting out flags and say no, say no terrorism. No. I'm saying that within ourselves, we must resist ourselves. We must be able to have the strength to resist the internal injunctions to be forced upon ourselves, the idea that we are terrorists. The community at large, the entire world at large, they do not understand this. They don't understand the reality of what being a Muslim is. What they are being fed is this idea of a Muslim equals to terrorist. This idea of Islam being subhuman has been going on for generations, bro. Since the 1920s, Muslims has been propagated and being given this idea that we are subhuman. The fact today is, you just look at recent talks, documentations, it's clear that a lot of people in this world look at Muslims as subhuman, as 2 billion people as subhuman. Where did it come from? Why is it there? The problem is this, is that we accept the rhetoric. We accept that idea. We acknowledge the exterior imposition on us of our terroristic values. So we need to resist this. We need to say no. Never again. Never again will we accept this notion that being a Muslim, being a person who embraces the deen in its entirety, sounds like a terrorist duck, looks like a terrorist duck, and is a terrorist duck. In fact, we need to redefine the idea of what a terrorist is. We don't need to we don't need to redefine it. We need to use and have objective standards of what is a terrorist. We need to put people in their place. We need to have the courage to tell them that no, you do not have the right to force upon these ideas on us. How do we do it? Is by being a cognitive dissonance. We have to have a principled, non-violent experience of this world. We have to show the world that our existence itself is a proof of the falsehood of the narrative. We have a great opportunity before us, and we always had this opportunity. We always had the opportunity to be a cognitive dissonance to society. For unfortunately, because we had the nature of things, nature of the world is that Allah says, in Surah Al-Waqiyah, there will always be the people who are the foremost, the people who are the ones that is the front runners of this deen. They will always be little, and usually the majority will be sellouts. And these people, unfortunately, because of the amplification of this idea of unfortunately, the idea of propagation of priesthood within Islam, that these scholars, these priests, or with their titles, they represent the Islamic perspective. Unfortunately, no, they do not represent the Islamic perspective. Every one of us has the Prophet as an example, not these priests that are in political places, or who has many titles behind their name. They do not represent it. You have within your reach the experience and the role model of the Prophet ﷺ and our pious predecessors. They are the one who shows us, who gives us the role model of what is right and what is wrong, and we follow it. And because we follow these rightly guided role models who are not sellouts, who are themselves a cognitive dissonance in this world, who force upon us, entire Muslim community, a collective guilt of being terrorists and needing to behave ourselves. In the words of the great Ridwan, acted by Mr. Shah Rukh Khan, my name is Mubarak and I'm not a terrorist. Assalamu alaikum.